Hello, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 829.33 FM WBAP. Yeah, let's go. All right, I like that breaking news that you just heard in the top of the hour newscast. They found the girl in the jet ski accident over Memorial Day weekend. The way I understand it, a woman on a jet ski hit an 18-year-old on a kayak, killed her, and then took off. And I'm super happy about this, not because of the death, obviously not, but the fact that we caught the suspect so quickly. And one of the optimistic things that you can take away from this is that people just aren't getting away with stuff these days like they did when you and I were kids. Because there was not only everyone had a camera in their pocket, and it's not just having a camera in your pocket. It's a camera that you don't have to take the film to Walgreens or Walmart or, I don't know, Skaggs or whatever you used to go to get it developed. It's instant. And not only do you have the picture, you can share it with anybody. You don't have to go make copies. You don't have to go to get it developed and then go to Kinko's and have them make like 100 copies or 1,000 copies and pass it around. You can just, boom, put it on social media, and other people virally, organically can take that picture, share it out. Who is this woman? Can you find this woman? See this woman in the black top? She's suspected. She's a person of interest in an accident on Memorial Day weekend that resulted in the death of one of our neighbors. And here it is, just Tuesday, and we got her. Now, I don't want to get anything political about this, like, was shooting illegal or whatever. Who cares? Who cares? Someone died, and what appears to be a terrible accident. And 20, 30 years ago, very well may have gotten away with it. Do you remember, like, how often that happened when we were kids? Something heinous would happen, and we would never find the guy? Yeah, because why? Because not everyone was walking around with the ability to take decent pictures. The pictures that come off your phone, pretty much better than anything you shot with a camera back in the 1980s or maybe even the 1990s. And then the ability to share it out. Because I actually didn't see the news story about the girl getting killed on Memorial Day weekend here locally. I saw the picture of people passing around, the picture of the lady of interest. And they were already passing around. Hey, were you around Grapevine Lake on Sunday? Do you know who this is? Do you work with her? Are you related to her? And man, it's just amazing how fast we can all be a part of like this information dissemination that in this case worked on the side of justice. We love to gripe about how everyone's addicted to your phones, or everyone's driving around looking at their phone. It's so dangerous. Life was so much better before cell phones. No, it wasn't. No, this is better. For every kid that gets stuck in some sort of TikTok hole for a couple hours instead of doing their homework, you have justice being done. And look at all the justice that happens from people recording either like a crime in progress or maybe even a misbehaving cop. Dare I say the George Floyd riots wouldn't have been possible without everyone having not just a camera, a video camera in your pocket at all times, but also the ability to disseminate it and the ability for the rest of us to sort of weed through all the other thousands of people who are trying to put a message on our phone and decide what's important organically. No one had to tell the populace of North Texas that this was an important story. And you know what? Skip the Diddy trial info and skip this other entertainment stuff and skip some of these other, like a new restaurant's opening. This is the important stuff. Grab it, amplify it, and let's bring justice for the 18-year-old kayaker that was killed on Grapevine Lake on Sunday. And it happened. So give yourself a round of applause. People are generally good and will do the right thing. And I suspect a lot of this was amplified by strangers who didn't know either one of the parties. They just recognized that there's an injustice that happened, and we would all like to be a tool to maybe make justice happen. And so positive development. Now, again, this is all allegedly, reportedly. I don't know if this is the right person, or I don't even know how to say her first name properly. But this is something that I just want you to remember the context, because we gripe about cell phones a lot. But cell phones here have given us an avenue of justice where when we were kids, people got away with stuff all the time. So we have the police doing their job. You did your job. And look, nothing's going to bring back the 18-year-old we lost on Grapevine Lake, but at least the person didn't get away with it and could be held to account. So give yourself a round of applause. Also, the next James Show listener meet and greet is tonight. Yeah. We're going out to Keller after the show. Manny G's on Keller Parkway. I'm going to go out there probably from 7 to around 9-ish or so, but there's not a time limit on it or anything. Come out, meet me. More importantly, meet other James Show listeners, other WBAP listeners. Look, I have some friends that have kind of fallen by the wayside over the years. You get wrapped up in your whole family and your career, and then maybe even grandkids and extended family, and you kind of lose that social network. Well, let's build that sucker back up with some like-minded people. You both like the same radio stations. You're probably going to get along great. And a few people over in Tarrant County and Denton County. I'm coming like right to the edge between you two guys. So I want to see some of y'all out there. And let's go have some fun tonight. Manny G's in Keller, 7 to 9, the next James Show listener meetup. Coming up next, we have another congressman that went down to El Salvador to try and meet with Abrego Garcia. They're just falling all over themselves to go advocate for a guy who I think we all pretty much agree that this guy was not a good dude. He was probably part of MS-13. He was probably human trafficking. He's probably a wife beater, but they can't stop themselves. Do they think this helps them in the court of public opinion? Do they really think this is the way forward? They can't stop defending a foreign gangbanger. And this is another guy. Has he ever done this for an American citizen? Has he gone and visited anyone in his district that's in prison that's actually a citizen? Wild stuff. Details coming up next. You'll hear from him in El Salvador yesterday. He even went on a Memorial Day weekend. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP. Come on out to the next James Show meet and greet tonight. Manny G's and Keller from 7 to 9. Thank you very much. But I just can't believe the headline sometimes. I saw this headline and I thought, what? Why is there a story from 2 weeks ago still showing up in my feed? No, this just happened over the weekend, the long weekend. A Maryland congressman went to El Salvador to try and meet with suspected MS-13 gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Okay. This time it was Representative Glenn Ivey. He says he's the congressman that is Kilmar Abrego is one of his constituents. Well, no, I mean, technically not if he's illegal. He's not one of your constituents, and he's definitely not now. Does your district cover a jail in El Salvador? But I just want you to hear from him himself, and I'm just marveling at these people falling all over themselves to go defend and free and return to America a guy who's not supposed to be here, a guy who has no legal right to be here, a guy who has a pile of evidence that shows he's quite likely a MS-13 gang member, a domestic abuser, and a human trafficker. But yeah, go ahead. You be you, Rep. Glenn Ivey. This is him in El Salvador.
I'm the congressman that represents Kilmar. I came all the way down from the United States after we'd contacted their ambassador, after we'd made formal requests to our ambassador to the El Salvadoran government. And we came here to visit him today. And now they're telling us we got to go all the way back to El Salvador, to San Salvador to get a permit. That's ridiculous. We ought to have a chance to come in and visit. They knew we were coming. They knew why we were coming. And they know we have the right to do this. So they need to just cut the crap. Let us get in there and have a chance to see him and talk with him. We got his lawyer here. We got somebody from the unions here to talk with him. Let us in. Stop playing games. Let us have a chance to talk with him.
And now they say the underpinning on their defense of Abrego Garcia is their just abiding concern for constitutional due process, which we all find that to be complete BS. Glenn Ivey, were you concerned with the due process of all the January 6ers? Some of whom were held a long time without a hearing, more than the 48 hours. Some of whom were put in solitary, cruel, and unusual. Have you ever been concerned about the due process of anyone else in your district, so much so that you went and tried and visit them in prison? Have you ever done that at an American prison for an American citizen? No, you're not really concerned with due process. This is actually working, though. This is a PR move. Now you get to be on MSNBC. You get to be on CNN. You get to be portrayed as a sympathetic figure. Look, another guy trying to do the right thing. And he didn't even use he swears he didn't use taxpayer money for the trip. He's paying for this himself. He himself is covering the cost. That's how much he cares, y'all. But if you only care about this guy and there's no other evidence of you caring about due process, this isn't normal. This isn't part of a larger pattern of you just being concerned about due process. This is you taking advantage of a good PR situation because the compliant media will just repeat your narrative, whatever you tell them. No, I'm just concerned about due process. Really? Were you concerned about due process during COVID when you weren't allowed to go to your grandmother's funeral or even attend church? Did you get a hearing when your constitutional rights were being abridged during COVID? I didn't get one. Oh, that's so weird. But none of these people were concerned about due process then? That's crazy town. You got to be kidding me. That makes no sense. The caring about due process is one of the weakest, flimsiest veils they could put in front of their cancer-ridden face. Not that he has cancer. I'm just saying they're hiding something ugly with this just thin lie. But go ahead. Go to El Salvador. He claims that he already had it set up between the American Embassy and Salvadoran officials. He said he thought he had a scheduled meeting there, but when he got there, the people at the prison said you have to go to San Salvador, which is the capital, only about 90 minutes away, and get some sort of paperwork or form or some sort of, hoop to jump through, and then they'll let him meet up. And apparently that's way too much. He's willing to go all the way to El Salvador, but not all the way 90 minutes to the office or whatever to get the paperwork correct. He just came home. He's already home, by the way. That video is from yesterday in El Salvador, and he's already back. So, yeah, he cares so much that when there's the first hurdle that would have taken, an hour and a half drive, he gave up. So do you really care or not? This is such a double standard within the same story. But now he didn't go there really to meet with Abrego Garcia or even to get him out. He just wanted the press. He got the press, declared it a win, and went home. I mean, how just nakedly political could this be? You're not concerned about the guy's human rights. You're not down there fighting and concerned about due process. If you are correct and his due process rights were violated, why'd you just give up on him? Because you didn't want to take a 90-minute drive. Why did you just quit so soon? If you are such a due process warrior, you mean a 3-hour round trip is more than you're willing to put up with? That makes no sense whatsoever. None. But here they are. They're going to do. How many guys are going to visit this dude? How many congressmen? How many senators? How many people can we go visit an MS-13 gangbanger who's in a prison in his own home country for crimes? I mean, we've got these people visiting non-Americans in a foreign prison who have committed domestic violence, or there's evidence of domestic violence, MS-13 gangbanger, and human trafficking. And the human trafficking is not even that theoretical. I was playing you the body cam footage of when he got pulled over in Tennessee, driving people from Maryland to somewhere in Missouri. I think he said St. Louis, wasn't that his bit? So, yeah, I can't wait for more of y'all to go visit him. Make this your cause célèbre. You think this helps you? You think this endears you to the American people? How many of you have had a relative or a close friend or a spouse or whatever in prison? Any congressmen go break their backs trying to visit them? It's the damnedest thing. I don't know why they think this helps their cause. Yeah, it gets you good press. Yes, it gets you on CNN and MSNBC. But overall, this has to hurt more than it helps. Do you agree? Do you think these people are helping their cause by falling all over themselves to go visit a gangbanger in El Salvador, a non-American, a foreign citizen gangbanger in another country? It's the damnedest thing. I couldn't have imagined this 5 years ago. Well, maybe 10 years ago. I could not have imagined this at all. And then also coming up, do you think Jasmine Crockett is the front runner? I said it months ago. I've had several guests say it. And now David Hogg, one of the DNC vice chairs, says that he thinks she's the leader that the Democrats need. And you know what? I don't think he's wrong. Not only do I think she's their front runner, I think she's their most likely candidate in 2028. And I'm not trying to scare you here, but coming up next, I'm going to make the case that I think if we slip up and we don't watch it, she could actually be your next president. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'll plead my case next on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Well, hey there. Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 829.33 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker, and I'm going to say something that it may sound like I'm joking or I'm saying this just to be sensational, but I mean this with all sincerity, and you better listen. Jasmine Crockett right now, if I had to pick anyone, is the front runner to be the next Democrat candidate for president in 2028. And don't laugh, I think she has a real chance of winning. I don't know if that's a news flash. Said it before. But now it's not only me saying it. Other people are saying it. And we'll get into the details of why after you hear someone from Team Blue say the same thing that I've been saying for the last couple of months. This is David Hogg. If that name doesn't already ring a bell, he was one of the kids from the Parkland school shooting, Marjorie Stone Douglas, when that one was called. And now he wasn't at school the day it happened, but he immediately showed up and started talking to the cameras, and they kind of took a shine to him. And so he's ridden that wave of popularity into becoming an anti-gun, pro-Democrat activist. He got a free ride to Harvard, scooted through in the last 4 years, and now he's been activism. That's his job now, activism. So he was recently made one of the vice chairs of the DNC, Democrat National Committee. And he's not really getting along that well with the old guard, the James Carvilles of the world. But I think this is more his party than the old people who are kind of being pushed out the exit with Joe Biden. And he was on the Breakfast Club on Friday, and he said kind of the same thing. But I want you to pay attention to his rationale on why he thinks Jasmine Crockett is the leader the Democrats need right now. Tell me if he mentions one policy or if this is all 100% a personality rationale.
Jasmine Crockett.
Jasmine Crockett, I love her. Mm-hmm. She is amazing.
Yeah.
I think that people want to see somebody who fights and calls out the ultimately. I think that's what Jasmine does, and we need a hell of a lot more people that are out there that are willing to do just that and call people out on their BS and not say, oh my God, Republicans are going to criticize me for saying this. Screw that. They're going to criticize you no matter what. So what we should be asking ourselves is, what are we really fighting for? Yeah. Because we know it matters. And I think Jasmine is frankly the type of leader that we're really looking to support in some senses, right? Somebody who is out there that frankly doesn't give a damn what the other side, at least the elected Republicans in Congress say what they believe in. And at least even if you don't agree with her, you know what she stands for.
Yeah.
Because she makes it very clear. And people are really craving that right now. They don't want more politicians that say talking points that it doesn't even feel like they believe, or you don't even really know what they mean. They want somebody who's out there that says what they believe and doesn't care what somebody else thinks about it. They want that authenticity.
All right. I hate that because it's so shallow. But to be fair, I hear Team Red people say that about their preferred candidate sometimes. Like, Trump's a fighter. Yeah, but does he want to make government smaller? That's the most important part. And yeah, Jasmine Crockett's a fighter. Yeah, but how would she govern? He didn't give you one hint of how she would govern, just how she would respond to criticism, I suppose, or her just general ad hominem leadership qualities. They don't exactly admit what they're for. Because that's not really selling too well these days. However, I don't think he's wrong. His rationale is as shallow as a mud puddle. But I really do think she's the best thing they got going right now. And the big seller, and it shouldn't matter to you or any voter, but it does, is how much she has in common with the Barack Obama of 2006 and 2007. Barack Obama, you didn't know him in 2005 at all. Almost no one knew him. He did have one speech at the Democrat National Convention that kind of got some people's attention in 2024, and that's all we really knew about him. He spent a short time in the state legislature, just like Jasmine Crockett. And then after, I think, he did 2 terms, he immediately moved up to the national version of the legislature, and he went straight to senator. Now, Jasmine Crockett did 1 term here in the state legislature and then automatically got promoted, and she's in the House of Representatives. And for some of the same reasons. There's a reason why you've seen her all over the media this last year, because she's good at it. And there's a reason why she keeps getting asked by MSNBC and CNN to keep coming back on, because she did good the previous time. And of all the options, of all the people they could have booked for Meet the Press or Face the Nation or Rachel Maddow or whatever show is going to have her on today, she was better than all the other options. She's good at this media game. Now, of course, she also checks some other very important boxes. She's not one of those evil, straight, white Christian males. Those are just, aren't they the worst? I mean, just the worst this whole country has to offer. And it shouldn't matter, but it's the same thing. Barack Obama got to ride that wave. He got to be a first of some sort. Also, he doesn't have the stink of, no one can accuse him of being racist. It's very helpful. Now, it wouldn't be to you, doesn't really affect your vote, but remember, we're talking about Team Blue voters. They think this is some of the most important stuff out there. Two other reasons I think that she has not just a chance of being the next presidential candidate, but winning the entire election in 2028. Number one is they have nobody else. Who is on the bench right now? Because in 2008, when Obama came up, he had to leapfrog a Hillary Clinton. Who does she have to leapfrog? Nobody. Gavin Newsom? They're not going to let that greasy weirdo be the top of their party. I mean, the donors might want it. And then she also doesn't really have anybody that needs to get screwed over. Hillary Clinton had to screw over Bernie Sanders because he was the real popular candidate that the Democrat voters wanted in the primary process. They had to do the same thing for Joe Biden, screw over Bernie Sanders in 2000. Then they just cleared the whole deck in 2024 and didn't even let anybody pretend to run against the guy who we now know is just months away from dying, demented, ate up with cancer. So she doesn't even have to leapfrog anybody, and she doesn't have to fend off of Bernie Sanders nipping at her heels. The deck is clear for her. And then I hate to admit this, but it's true. One of the big reasons that I think, on top of all the pile of evidence I have already supporting her as the next candidate, it shouldn't matter again, but it does. She's pretty. Okay, I'll admit it. No one wants to say it because we're not supposed to say anything nice about anyone on Team Blue, but she is. And if you think that doesn't matter, look at Hillary Clinton and look at Kamala Harris. Is Hillary Clinton pretty? Is she nice to look at? Was she even nice to look at when she was like 29? She was never attractive. She has a terrible voice. She has a terrible presentation. You can tell she hates the little people and just people in general. She's probably nice and introverted. Miss Parker's introverted and generally hates people too, but not as like bitter and disdainful. You could hear, nah, nah. That's how Hillary Clinton sounds. And then Kamala Harris, not much better. Now, get ready. Jasmine Crockett's the front runner for 2028 for the Democrat presidential ticket. And if we're not on our game, you very well could see her be your next president. Now, if you think I'm crazy, let me hear about it. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. We'll talk to Tim Young next from the Heritage Foundation and get his thoughts on what the table looks like as it's set up now for 2028. Jasmine Crockett as the front runner. Get used to it. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. A lot of people kind of laugh at the idea that Jasmine Crockett is going to be the next face of the Democrat Party. I think you're wrong. I think she has all the tools. Whether it'll actually happen, I don't know. Someone else could step up and take the spotlight. But for right now, I think, like you heard David Hogg in the last segment, she might be the next big thing. And I think you're kidding yourself if you take her lightly. My next guest coming in from the Heritage Foundation, America's top conservative think tank, Tim Young, back on the James Show. Now, Tim, I remember last time you came on, we had a discussion on who is the dumbest member of Congress, and some commenters said Jasmine Crockett, and we both kind of jumped at the same time, and we're like, no. That's just an act. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very excited for her to be the head of the Democrat Party. Listen, I don't know what they're doing with their branding. They don't know what they're doing with their branding either. The fact that they brought in David Hogg, who had no political experience, and it's kind of showing here that he's standing up for her. But maybe this is a new guard coming in because they realized, Obama's kind of pushed out now that Biden's gone and Kamala's gone. The Clintons are kind of gone. I think there's a void over there, and there's just a lot of people swinging for the hills here.
Well, she has a lot of the same situation around her that Barack Obama had. She wasn't really well known. She did a short stint in the state legislature and immediately got promoted and is just waiting through the beginnings of that. So she doesn't have a whole lot of background, and which means she doesn't have a whole lot of baggage. And the thing that she has that Barack didn't have is she's competing against nobody.
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. But, if you take a look at, being the head of the DNC is one thing. But, being the candidate in the next election might be another with AOC. I think is going to throw her hat in there. You have random people, though, that you see popping up along the way here with Chris Van Hollen has kind of popped up.
Nope.
He seems to be getting a lot of media since he took his little free trip on the taxpayer dime to El Salvador. There's a lot of it really is an open field, but she does not have much competition. They all kind of seem like mid-tier players when there hasn't been a star that's been identified yet.
Well, Jasmine Crockett was asked about, who the next front runner will be, and she actually said there was a conference call with a bunch of the big donors, and they already have some guy who picked it out. It's going to be some old white guy again. And so she probably has an inkling on where the donors are leaning. Could the donors override the will of the Democrat voter again?
No, and I'll tell you why. So it's probably Gavin Newsom. That's who they've been trying to put over. That's why he's been playing moderate and having conservatives on a show. I hope those conservatives are getting paid good money to go on a show because it isn't worth it otherwise. But ultimately, when you take a look at what party is racist and sexist the most, I'm going to point fingers at the Democrats, and I don't think they'd want to put over a jive-speaking African-American woman from Dallas. I don't think that's going to be their pick. And if the donors have their way, it's going to go with somebody traditional and some, like she said, some old white guy.
Well, I think she plays the game well because the clips of her that go viral are the jive-talking, sassy Jasmine Crockett. But you can hear her code switch. I got her on the MSNBC recently. And listen to this. This is her criticizing the big, beautiful bill. But there's no slang. There's no inflection. She is speaking just academically and clear as a bell. Listen to this.
All we have seen out of this administration is that they have cut jobs, whether it was within the federal government or outside of the federal government. And what we've also seen is that they don't care about the people that are struggling the most.
See, she can turn it off and on whenever she needs to, Tim.
When she wants to communicate with me, though, she needs to start yelling girl, this bill be crazy. What you doing with this? I'm waiting for that from her, man. I haven't spent a lot of time in South Dallas. I've kind of not met many people who speak like that there either.
Yeah, she hasn't really spent a whole lot of time in South Dallas. For those of you not familiar with her background, St. Louis, posh school that cost about as much as I make in a year. And then she went to, was it University of Houston or something to that effect?
I think it was Houston, yeah.
Yeah. So Jasmine Crockett, do not take her lightly. She is very likely going to be your next presidential candidate. Right now, I think she is the face. And she's earned it, being the face of the Democrat Party, because she really does do well in these media interviews. There's a reason why they keep calling her back. There's a reason why this And then Sunday when she's going to be on a show, they could have picked anybody else to invite, and they picked her because she works. Tim, can you continue with me for one more segment?
Of course.
All right. Well, some people are busy. I don't know. This is Tim Young from the Heritage Foundation breaking down the front runner for the Democrat Party because it's not really that simple. And then also I'm going to ask him about the $20 million Democrat initiative to reach out to straight white male voters. Hilarious, too. Details coming up on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. I'm your host, James Parker. We continue with Tim Young from the Heritage Foundation. And I'm warning you, you may think it's fun, or you may think it's a joke, or you may think it's far-fetched. Jasmine Crockett is your most likely presidential candidate for the Democrats. Now, not only have I been saying it, and Tim Young said it on a previous James Show before, but now the Democrats are starting to notice it too. David Hogg said it on the Breakfast Club on Friday, and it went around the social media ecosphere without a whole lot of pushback. But Tim, who else? Who would be your number two guess on the front runner for 2028?
I think they're putting over AOC. I said to you the last time I was on your show that she has been getting better. She's been improving. They put her out in front of national audiences. They've been dragging out Bernie, who's the populist, to kind of help bolster her national attention. Not that she doesn't already have it, but, he was their last kind of populist socialist candidate on the left who I think really had a chance to beat Biden in 2020. So they're trying to put her over as well. I think that's your number two pick.
All right. Let's ask Joe in Southlake. And if you want to jump in, 800-288-9227. By the way, you're in Southlake. That's not too far from tonight's James Show meetup over in Keller. Are you coming tonight, Joe?
No, I'm not, James, but thanks for asking.
Well, I'm sorry I asked. All right, what's your comment for me and Tim Young?
I love you.
That was it? He didn't ask his question. I didn't do that. Did he hang up on purpose, or?
Did he say I love you and hang up? That's not. At least that was a nice troll. I wish I had trolls like that.
He must have accidentally hung up, because I think this is him calling back right now. The phone line just re-rang up. But I'm interested in these people who would push back against it, because I really want to hear what the argument is. Because if you're going to say she wouldn't be good for America, look, I'm not saying she would be good for America. I'm not even saying she has the best policy set out of the Democrats. I'm saying she's just the most likely person to win out of Team Blue. Oh, and he did call back. All right, well, let's try this again. All right, Joe, I guess that was an accident. What was your comment for myself and Tim Young from the Heritage Foundation?
Well, I agree with Tim. I hope that she is. I just don't think that she would win it. I don't think she's a problem, because, first off, before I knew anything, she does love to use inflections. When she is quoting where she's at, she went to debate President Trump in an intelligence test. Of course, she's a University of Houston graduate. But then when she's talking about our Governor Hot Wheels, and he's a hot mess down here in Texas, and suddenly she changes her inflections that according to her, and nobody likes a smart aleck. I could use other terminology. And you can say, well, President Trump does certain things. Well, let me tell you about President Trump. He's got the receipts. She does not. She doesn't have any receipts, no credibility, no original or even any kind of ideas. She just wants to go against anything that this administration is doing.
Joe,
many things. Yeah.
You're describing Barack Obama in 2007. He was code switching, using different accents based on the audience in front of him. He had no record. He had no skins on the wall. He had no real defined policy preferences, and he won, Joe.
Well, unfortunately, we have learned from that. We have learned from everything that goes and everything that the government is digging up and what the Democrats have been doing behind the scenes. They can't be trusted. They have no ideas. The ideas that they had, we had better ones. And that's why most of the 87% of the counties in the entire United States voted for President Trump. I'm sorry. We've seen through all of this fraud, this fake.
We have. But they haven't. Remember that half of the country loved the COVID shutdowns. They couldn't line up to get their vaccines fast enough. They believed Joe Biden was still sharp as a tack 1 year ago. They thought Jussie Smollett really got attacked. They thought Hunter Biden's laptop was really Russian disinformation. These people can be made to believe anything they hear on TV. So, Joe, I think you really underestimate the sheepish behavior of Team Blue voters.
James,
can I weigh in on this? I want to jump in on Joe.
Go ahead, Tim.
Joe, yeah, I don't think our voters have learned at all, because we just lost. If you take a look across Tarrant County in particular, we lost a bunch of school board seats a month ago. I don't think people were paying attention, and this is how things sneak through. This is how Jasmine Crockett sneaks through. I think we celebrate too much We forget we need to work all the time. And the Democrats are always on their game trying to take advantage of that. So I like to think people are smarter. I think that we've wised up to it. But it comes down to people who turn out to vote and who's showing up at the polls, and we ain't doing it.
Joe, your thoughts?
Well, most of the people, when it comes to the border, when it comes to the economy, you can say half of the country. But when it comes to the core issues of what our party is represented, it was up in the 60, 70, 80% on all of that. If we don't have a border, we don't have national security, we don't find out who these illegals are that are potential terrorists that can harm our national security, we ain't got jack. We have nothing unless we have national security. We have nothing unless we have an economy that is flourishing. And I'll tell you, these ideas they have, what ideas did they have? They had no ideas. They have no original ideas. It's the same time. You're right.
Joe, you're totally right. But you're describing
There's
what
gonna
won
be
in
a half
2008.
that's gonna vote for them anyway. This doesn't matter. They're still going to have that hardcore. But when it comes to the key issues, and far as the next election, you think that President Trump isn't going to get out and campaign for whoever we decide to pick, whether it be J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio in a combination, or whoever it is?
I want to throw in again on this. I want to throw in again on this because we have nothing if we can't protect our kids. And in Tarrant County in this last election, a couple weeks ago, we did not. The end. Like it's the border. There are all these other major issues. But if we sleep on these local issues, which is what happened, we lose this country just as much as if we have an open border. Maybe worse.
That's a great call, Joe in Southlake, and a great response there. This is Tim Young from the Heritage Foundation. And, of course, he has a huge following online on Instagram and Twitter. Find him. Tim runs his mouth. Thank you very much, Tim Young, for your time on the James Show today.
Thanks. Sorry to get combative with your caller there, but I'm fired up, man.
Well, it's not combative. You're on the same team. You're just really, passionate about an important subject. Makes sense to me. Thank you. This is Tim Young, y'all, Heritage Foundation. Now, coming up next, I found an amazing guy. This is probably the Yoda to my Luke Skywalker. This is a guy who was in Dallas media back in 1983 when DART was founded, and he has receipts of the promises DART made to the taxpayers of North Texas in 1983, and then we'll let you judge whether or not DART has lived up to his promises, or if this is just more damning evidence, which I believe it is, that it needs to be shut down immediately for the fraud and biggest waste of taxpayer dollars in Texas history. Legendary Dennis McQuistion, up next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Well, hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. I'm your host, James Parker, News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. I am so excited for my next guest because I feel like when Luke Skywalker found Yoda, if you've been listening, if this isn't your first James Show, I hate Dart with the hot heat of 1,000 suns. My wish isn't for it to be cut back or scaled back or not expended. It's for it to be all shut down. All the trains and buses and whatever gets sold to the private sector. We rip up all the tracks, and the public officials have to write an apology letter to the taxpayers of North Texas for all this. But I found a guy who actually knows even more than I do about this because he was there when DART was founded. Dennis McQuistion from Perspectives. Now, welcome to the James Show. I'm so happy to meet you.
Well, thank you very much, James. But let me ask you: do you have a strong opinion?
Yeah, right. So I found him on op-ed he wrote. This was from my friend Chris Putnam's DallasExpress.com, and I tell you to go to this because they put stuff on here that Dallas Morning News doesn't want to touch. Fort Worth Star-Telegram doesn't want to touch. The reason why I'm so excited to have Dennis on the show today is he was here in 1983 and reporting on DART when it was first proposed, and you were writing op-eds back in the early 80s in the Dallas Morning News and the Dallas Times-Herald when it existed, and you predicted that DART's plan wouldn't work and would turn out to be the biggest financial boondoggle in Dallas's history. Here we are, 40 years later, and you've been proven right. So I think you should get a victory lap.
Well, I appreciate that. I really hate it for all the people in the Dallas area who are paying this tax and who are looking at this boondoggle. One of the things that was kind of funny is one of the Dallas Morning News editorial writers, Bill Murkison, called me a Chicken Little back in 1983, just before the election. And I ran into him at a cocktail party about 10, 15 years later. And he said, "Dennis, why didn't we listen to you when you were talking about this?" And I said, "Bill, because you, the Dallas Morning News, the Dallas Times-Herald, and all the other people in town were cheerleaders. Instead of checking facts," I said, "I had facts. I debated all of these people with DART, including Walt Heumann, whose baby it was, and beat them every time because I had facts and they had there's a word for it in Texas, but you know the initials. It's BS." And so you had a lot of people who sincerely believed that great international cities needed to have this kind of public transit. And I've been in those great international cities. In fact, I live close to one now in France, as you know. And so I can tell you that what they did, James, was not only the wrong thing. Let me tell you how bad it was. We did a program. We had a debate just before August 13th, 1983, and we'd invited Bob Poole from the Reason Foundation, who's probably the preeminent transit guy in the world.
Love Reason,
and
by the way.
Yeah, of course. And a guy named Jim Ramsey from NYU, and he's a big-time academic. I sent them both the plan before they got here. I picked up Ramsey at the airport, DFW, and I said, "Jim, welcome. We're going to go over and do this debate now." And I said, "Did you get the plan?" He said, "Dennis," he said, "if they had sat around a table and said what is the absolute worst thing you can do, they could not have come up with anything worse than this." And that, to me, is fairly devastating. Now, DART didn't show up for the debate, by the way. They said we were running a fundraiser. Now, we charged $15 and served wine and hors d'oeuvres. You do the math.
You lost money on the event. It wasn't a fundraiser, yeah.
Of course. I'm the one who debated the pro side. So you really have to know both sides of this issue. And like I say, it was a boondoggle and hatched by people. And, of course, the consultants, the people who are going to benefit from it, the electric companies and everybody else did it. And the Dallas Morning News and continues to be a cheerleader for it, as do most of the board members in these cities.
Well, you also brought receipts that I had never seen before from 1983. Now, I had suspected that there's no way DART lived up to the promises that it made when the proposition was passed. And I only suspected that because that's the way it's gone for every government public transportation program in your entire life. But it was even worse than I thought. And I guess because I'd never seen this before. So in 1983, right, DART was promising that they would have only 25 to 35 employees. That's right there. That doesn't sound believable for 5 seconds.
Well, it wasn't believable. Now, to their credit, what they said was, we're going to contract out anything else we need, which is not what they did. They have 3,800 employees now, so they missed it by a factor of, I don't know, 100, something like that. Pretty close. Huh?
Well, they have over 3,800 employees now. So, yeah.
Right.
Pretty factor of about 100, a little over 100 actually.
Yep.
If you take the high end of that, they predicted that 50% of their operating cost would be covered by the fare box. It turns out the fare box covers less than 10% of salaries in the last budget. And so it's just a huge embarrassing failure. They were supposed to have 147 miles of rail by 2010. We have 93 miles of rail and it's 2025. They weren't supposed to borrow money. They owe $3.8 billion in debt, which I looked it up. The debt service just for this year on DART, $222 million is just to pay the credit card interest on what DART's run up and the taxpayers' behalf.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. It truly is. And, your idea of just shutting it down obviously would probably be the best thing to do. But there's an old saying which you've heard: when you're digging yourself a hole, the first thing you do is quit digging. And so Matt Sheehan had a piece of legislation that was introduced in this session of the legislature in Austin that would basically have caused DART to rebate 25% of that 1% sales tax to these cities. And of course, it didn't get anywhere, as you might imagine, because people go down there and they whine and they bring some people in who ride it. Very few people who ride it, but I feel sorry for the people who depend upon it. But it's basically a welfare program for a few people who ride it, and it's a tragedy because we knew that to start with, James. We knew it. And, we didn't have the internet back in those days. I went to my friend Cliff Long and I formed an organization called...
I'm coming up against the break. I want to hear the backstory of this, but we have one of my new heroes here is a Dallas media legend, Dennis McQuiston, who was also on PBS and some other outlets for a while. We'll get a little bit more on the background, exposing how failed DART's promises were from 1983 versus now. And it's just more damning evidence on why this whole boondoggle needs to be shut down as soon as possible. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. We continue with Dennis McQuiston next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. I'm your host, James Parker. It's News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. The next James Show listener meet and greet is tonight in Keller. Manny G's on Keller Parkway. If you don't know where it's at, ask your phone. I'll be there from about 7 to about 9. And these are soft times because it's not like I get paid any different if I'm late. So we continue with my guest, Dennis McQuistion, and he's a guy who showed me some things that I didn't know about one of my most hated Texas institutions, and that's DART. Now, I really interrupted you while you were going through some of the backstory on how we ended up in this position. Mm-hmm. Please, Dennis, continue.
Okay, I will. Let me just give that that listener, however, some current numbers. The numbers I used in my op-ed for the Dallas Express were three quarters of a year. They have their year-end numbers now. They took in $42 million from the riders, people who rode $42 million. They paid out labor and benefits $456 million. So more than 10 times in labor and benefits what they got in from the fare box. They had a $950 million net operating loss, almost $1 billion net operating loss for what it's worth. $851 million in sales tax. That's where all the taxes come from. Now, how'd this thing start? There was an election in 1980 with a bus system that Walt Heumann pushed. Walt Heumann was with the Hunt Oil, by the way. If you wonder where the DART trains all end up in downtown Dallas, just sort of figure that out. Anyway, he lost that election, and then he came back and he said, and I quote, I'm on a personal crusade to give something back. Well, I'm not sure if giving back $1 billion a year in losses is what Walt Heumann had in mind. On his positive side, however, he was the chief guy behind expanding Central Expressway, so I got to give him that. So I went to SMU because long before the internet, and I found a study that the Department of Transportation had done in D.C., and they said there are 4 reasons why transit is subsidized. It saves energy, it's better for the environment, it helps the poor, and it reduces traffic congestion. That was the 4 reasons. Their study now, this is 4 years before this was passed, said these things. Doesn't save energy, doesn't improve the environment, doesn't reduce congestion, and the rich ride and the poor pay. That's what the Department of Transportation's own study said, and yet DART didn't pay any attention to that. Then I asked, and it was kind of interesting, I did several debates after the election, one with a Dallas Morning News editorial writer in front of 300 women. And I said to him, Hank, let me ask you, you guys, when you pick a way to go for something, do you sort of pick out what the issue is and look at what caused it and then maybe some alternatives and then pick the right one and then, editorialize about that? He said, yeah, that's about right. I said, well, when you get up here next in front of these 300 women, I want you to tell me the 4 causes of traffic congestion. I mean, you know the solution. That's DART. You've already talked about that. Tell us what the causes of traffic congestion are. He turned absolutely white, James. I said, look, Hank, why don't you just tell them one of the causes? Can you give them just one of the causes? Since you guys are so sure that you know the solution, surely you know at least one of the causes of traffic congestion. He couldn't tell them one. Does that tell you? And by the way, I was supposed to debate the head of DART, the CEO, but he was busy. But he and his chief financial officer snuck into the back of the room about halfway through the debate, which was kind of funny. Now, that chief financial officer is a guy named John McCracken. Nice guy. He was there for 4 or 5 years. After he left, he called me one day and he said, Dennis, you don't know me, but I'd like to take you to lunch. I said, great. Love to go to lunch. We went to lunch out on Botman Lake somewhere. And he said, you're probably wondering why I called you. And I said, yeah, why? He said, all the bad things you said about DART. And I said, yeah. He said, it's much worse than you've been talking about, much worse than you've been talking about. So that's kind of what I was up against. And, John McKay was not McKay with former anchor of Channel 8, but John McKay was the general manager of Channel 4. It was a CBS affiliate, James, back in '83. Okay. He went on the news one night, a month before the election, saying, here's why you ought to vote for DART. Have a different opinion, call me. Called this office the next day. They said, type up something for 60 seconds, bring it down here. We'll put it on the teleprompter, put you on the news tonight. I said, fine. Did that, went down there. They put it on the teleprompter. I read through it once for practice and then read through it the first time perfectly. And they said, how did you do that? I said, how did I do what? He said, you read through it perfectly the first time. People have to do this 10, 15 times. I said, I don't know. I typed it. You put it on the teleprompter. I read it. How hard is this?
Yeah, I'm literate.
So
That's how.
Exactly. So anyway, they said, you need to meet John McKay. So I met John McKay. It took me 15 minutes to convince him. He had no idea what he was talking about. So after Channel 4 was at my house the night of the election in Irving. So the television cameras there and the whole bit. And of course, the people who put $1 million into this thing bought the election because they just, took out ads, and the rest of us who knew what was going to happen didn't have any money to put on anything. So there we were.
Well, Dennis, I'm glad you got to tell your story. Everything you predicted in 1983 not only came true, but kind of explosively passed your predictions as well.
Right.
Did I see you're going to be in town June 9th?
You did. I'm going to be in town June 9th. Can I mention where I'm going to be?
No, definitely, because Dallas Express is the one who got us this op-ed, and we're friends with those guys, and Chris Putnam is having the JFK event. He told me about the JFK event when he was on like a couple of weeks ago. I didn't know you were going to be one of the hosts of that. So June 9th from 6 to 8 p.m., this is a Who Killed JFK forum, and it's going to happen at the Community Brew Company just up the street here, Commonwealth and 35. So now I'm definitely going. Dennis McQuistion.
Well, good.
Are y'all going to solve the mystery finally that no one's been able to solve here, or do you have?
I can't give you a spoiler alert on that, but let's just say that we will tell people some things they didn't know, some things that are happening today and happened last week with the Luna hearings. My associate, Dory Wiley, is really a big expert on this. He's been researching his whole life. He and I will be there for Dallas Express, as you said, from 6 to 8 on June the 9th. And we will talk about why JFK was killed. Probably, we can't tell you exactly who the shooters were, but we will tell you who killed him in terms of what group. We'll talk about LBJ's part in this thing, particularly the CIA's part, maybe some mafia, Cuba, even Mossad.
Wow.
I mean, there are all kinds of things that will blow people away. And a lot of my friends are coming, and a lot of my friends are listening to you right now, James, and there'll be new listeners of yours right now on this particular event.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you're my new best friend, and I wish you were my dad. Dennis McQuistion, your information is something I've been looking for years, so thank you very much. Again, he's going to be in Dallas at the Community Brew Company Monday, June 9th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., for the Who Killed JFK forum. Coming up next, Alex Stein from The Blaze. He's been pranking protesters, and we're going to answer the question, has the left lost its sense of humor? I say not all of them, but most of them. Details next. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey, homeowners, James Parker here for Blue Ribbon Roofing. You know, when I started doing the spots for Blue Ribbon, it said in the copy that they're certified roofing installers. And then I had some people sending me messages. We don't have certifications. We don't have licensing for roofers in Texas. And so I stopped saying it, but now I understand what it meant. He's not certified by the state of Texas. There's not a license there. He's certified by the shingle makers, by the people who he gets the supplies to fix your roof. And that's important because it's only the certified installers that will honor that under which they will honor the warranty for the part. So if your roof fails because there was a defective shingle or some other material that was used, that's the manufacturer's fault. They will only honor that if it was installed correctly by a certified installers. And I also learned when John came and visited on Friday, but there's really two big shingle manufacturers in the country. There's like a Coke and a Pepsi of shingles, and he's certified by both. So whatever roof you pick out, whatever color, whatever style, it's there's a good chance that you will be covered and the warranty will be honored. If there happens to be the super rare case that you get a defective piece of material. Again, that's super rare, but if you choose the wrong company, you're going to have to come out of pocket for that. So that's one of the thousands of reasons why you need to call blueribbondfw.com. Take advantage of the free inspection and find out if you need some help, or you can have peace of mind knowing your roof is okay. Go to blueribbondfw.com. Schedule your free inspection today. blueribbondfw.com. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. My next guest is Alex Stein from The Blaze. You may know him from some of his viral videos where he goes in front of the city council and sings a song or goes into character or goes on some awesome rant about him. And he is one of the troll kings that has parlayed that into a fantastic show on The Blaze. Alex Stein, welcome back to the James Show, sir.
James, what a nice introduction. Thank you for giving me that, all those kudos. I can't believe it. And, you're a great guest. Everybody needs to go watch the episode with James I know a lot of people are listening in their cars right now, and you guys can't see it, but you can see, James, you're actually a handsome fellow. A lot of people don't even realize that because you're on the radio. Do you ever feel bad about that they can't tell that you're an attractive man?
No, it's an advantage being on the radio, because in the real world I'm like a 6, but on the radio I'm a solid like 8.5, because everyone here is just, it looks like the bar scene from Star Wars in any radio station you go into.
Why is that, I wonder? Why does a disc jockey...
Because if we were pretty, we'd be on TV. That's why.
Yeah, that makes sense, James. But, yeah, no, like I said, thank you for that introduction. That was very kind of you.
Well, look, I'm going to play in the next segment a couple of sound bites of you trolling people. You got into a rap battle, but you go to protesters and you put a microphone in front of their face, and they're pretty easy to work up. You know, you like to push buttons, and we both use troll as a compliment, not as an insult, as a lot of people would make it. But I remember...
term of endearment.
Right.
Term of endearment is what we should call it, I think.
I remember when I was a kid, comedians leaned left, and it felt like that's where most of the comedy was, you know, like a Bill Hicks or even a Seinfeld or whatever. But in this new modern iteration in 2025, has the left lost its sense of humor, Alex Stein?
Well, I mean, James, I think that's kind of obvious, and you can see the decline of Hollywood and how they haven't made a good comedy movie in forever. I mean, you know, I can't even remember one since like The Hangover. You know, I'm sure there's been some good comedies between now and then, but just very rarely do they make a good movie anymore because they've lost the sensibility that people really have, that we don't need to be so sensitive. And they're trying to make everything so desensitized where it's so sterile, it's just not creative, it's not funny. So, yes, that's why Shane Gillis, that's why Joe Rogan, that's why these people that aren't afraid to, say some controversial stuff are having the most success right now.
Well, you know, I think of some counterexamples to your claim that they haven't made any funny movies, but all my counterexamples, the bad guy is a straight white male. Like Role Models is pretty funny, the Adam Sandler.
Yeah, that's a good movie. I'm not saying they're...
Or no, Grown Ups, not Role Models. Which one was it?
Well, Grown Ups is good with Adam Sandler, but I'm just saying, overall, when's the last time even, James, forget about comedies, but when's the last time we had a movie like a Pulp Fiction or Shawshank Redemption, or one of in the 90s we had the greatest movies ever, and I believe last year one of the highest grossing movies was Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So I mean we've just changed our viewpoint on art is a lot different. Not that I sound like an art snob, I don't even care. I like Married with Children, but we can't even get that in this day and age.
Well, you also have the lefty comedians that are still lefty, but they have been sort of ostracized from their own community, like a Joe Rogan. He still won't say he's a right winger. I mean, he was a Bernie bro as recently as 5 years ago. He's kind of on board with Trump just because he got thumped so hard over the ivermectin horse paste thing. But you still have like a Ricky Gervais who would probably still consider himself a liberal, even though he says some things that are not very woke. So a lot of these guys who are still lefty have been sort of ostracized from other lefty spheres. And then you've seen other guys, like I thought Bill Burr was either on the fence or maybe a tad leaning towards Team Red, but he's made that crystal clear in the last year that he's just going all in on Team Blue. So there's a weird divide that's happening in comedy right now.
Well, it's funny you say Bill Burr because Bill Burr actually used to talk mainly when podcasting was, not as popular as it is today. He would talk a lot about conspiracies and government cover-ups. And so he was a little more anti-government then, and then he became more successful and became more of a government crony. So it's kind of weird how he made that transition. I don't know if that makes sense for the people playing at home, but that's why I think you had that impression, and that's why I had that impression too, because Bill Burr used to be very, very much critical of the government and about how they lied, and now he doesn't talk like that. As a matter of fact, whatever the government narrative is, he leans into it and defends it wholeheartedly.
We're talking with Alex Stein from The Blaze. You're a local guy, went to Highland Park. You probably have strong opinions on local representative Jasmine Crockett. We were making the case earlier in the show that she's probably the Democrats' frontrunner for 2028. And I think even past that, she has a likelihood of winning the presidency because of so many parallels that she had with Obama in 2007, 2008 in that cycle. Is that what you see as well?
Well, James, I hate to say this, but I think you're wrong because I think it's AOC. I think that my favorite big booty Latina is a little ahead of Jasmine Crockett, but Jasmine Crockett's making a play. But this is what's different between Jasmine and AOC. I don't know that Jasmine has done anything wrong, but for some reason, I have a feeling that Jasmine will self-sabotage herself on the way to the top, that this success is going to go to her head. She didn't expect it. She started off as a Texas state rep talking very, demure and proper. And now all of a sudden she sounds like, she's a Tyler Perry movie in real life. So I'm just saying, I have a feeling, and I could be wrong. This is just my intuition, and I've been wrong, but I have been right about stuff. I have a feeling that she's going to self-sabotage herself, and she's not going to reach the potential that she could, like an AOC would do. I think AOC's smarter than Jasmine Crockett when it comes to self-sabotage and even marketing at this point, because Jasmine Crockett, it's not going to last. I just have a strong feeling that she's going to say something or do something that is not going to be received well. I could be wrong.
We could revisit this in about 3 years or so. This is Alex Stein from The Blaze. Thank you very much. I know you got to go, but I appreciate the time you gave me today, Alex. Find this show.
No, please, James, I'll come back on. I got to do a pre-tape thing at 4, but you got to come back on my show, and everybody go follow James. Like I said, handsome fella. I'm happy I met you in person. I'm like, man, I bet this guy looks like a gargoyle. It was a pleasure, James. You're a great guy. You're welcome on my show anytime. And call me. I love the listeners. Your listeners are great. They've come to my protest, and you gave me a lot of help. So
that's fantastic. All right. Well, I'll play some of the audio from Alex Stein coming up next. We'll get a good laugh at it. And then we're going to jump into this Democrat initiative to win back young straight white males. It's not going to work. It's all coming up on The James Show. News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. You're listening to News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. Welcome back to the big show. I know, good to see you too. The next James Show listener meetup is tonight in Keller, Manny G's, 7 to 9. Just ask your phone. Your phone knows where it's at. We had just talked to Alex Stein from the Blaze TV. And as a couple of examples on what we were talking about as far as him going out and trolling protesters, one awesome one happened that I wanted to share with you. He goes out and he did a freestyle rap behind a guy who is holding an anti-Elon Musk sign. Elon's a fascist or whatever. And they went back after the fact and set it to music. So what you hear is him just freestyling behind a guy. And then the guy turns around and addresses him. And they kind of turn that into part of the rap battle. And so this is what went viral over the weekend. I was just laughing. I watched this like 6 times. It's hilarious. Alex Stein from the Blaze TV.
It's time to trust Elon Musk.
I didn't say it was good.
Got the booty. African American with the plan. He doesn't give a damn if you're white or tan, cause he is a white African. No genocide in his state. I don't give a damn cause I'm feeling great. And I just know that he's gonna penetrate. He's got a lot of babies.
True.
I believe in evolution, that all of us immigrated from Africa. I don't believe in evolution. I don't believe in evolution. No, I don't believe that we evolved from pond scum. Reality doesn't matter to you? No, that's not reality. That's a theory. And you don't understand the difference. The Big Bang Theory is just a theory. Nothing is proven. But I'm a pimp on a blimp, and I'm rapping about Elon. And I know that he is an Eon. And you acting like a little peon. Got your sign in the street, standing there hot with your 2 feet, looking really scared, shaking like a tree. I don't give a damn, just let me be free. I'm proud time.
Is this what they teach people at Highland Park? Is this what y'all are teaching people over there? That's Alex Stein from the Blaze. And the new initiative from the Democrats, you're going to love it. Have you heard of SAM? They're calling it SAM. It's a new $20 million initiative that they're launching to try and win back males. Males? What's going on? What's the big change? Well, they say they're concerned because Trump swept the battleground states and the popular vote, something he didn't do in 2016. And so they're going to be investing in digital ads across social media and in video games. And they're going to do research into what types of syntax, language, and content go viral in male-dominated spaces. And I just can't laugh hard enough at this. If you want to learn what kind of syntax, language, and content could help win over male voters back to Team Blue, here's an idea. And this is going to go way out on a limb. How about you say one nice thing about us? How about, because a lot of this you could even make it a little hotter if you said straight white males. You realize me being a straight white male in modern America, the Democrats have nothing nice to say about me. No matter what the situation is, they will never defend me. Whether it's an Austin Metcalf situation or a Kyle Rittenhouse situation or George Zimmerman or Daniel Penny. How about you defend one of us at some point? No? Never? Well, gee, I wonder why you're not winning us over. We get demonized at every turn. And every DEI program is actually just a discrimination program against us. It seeks to diminish men's opportunities at every success, at every turn, whether it's getting into college, whether it's getting hired, whether it's getting promoted. Every celebration of DEI is a celebration of diminishing of males or straight white males, at least. In fact, I like using those all together. Because, look, here, if you're worried about the syntax and the word usage and the sort of language and content, how about you stop using one-way terms? Example, toxic masculinity. Now, there are some masculine traits that can be toxic, absolutely. But what's the converse of that? Is there a toxic femininity? Have you ever heard that once in your life from Team Blue? Is there a positive form of masculinity? Like we have toxic masculinity. Do we have anything do we have a positive masculinity or a constructive masculinity or a supportive or anything nice? Do you have anything nice to say about masculinity? No, you don't. So progressives have attributed Kamala Harris's loss to institutional misogyny and aggressive attitudes among men. Okay, how about you stop blaming us? How about for 1 second you go, well, maybe she was a candidate that no one voted for, that didn't win any primaries, that only had a 105-day campaign, that wouldn't do any interviews, that wouldn't answer any questions, that had all kinds of edited tape from 60 Minutes and all these other issues. How about you just lay down those things before you start blaming men? How about you did something wrong at some point? Maybe you didn't pick the best candidate out of a nation of 340 million people. No, it's just because men suck. And then you're going to turn around and say, well, why don't men like us? Because you hate us. And I think a lot of it is the DEI thing, because when women dominate an industry, it's celebrated. When men do, it's some sort of problem to be solved. Like when they have the unmanned flight crews. Have you seen that? Where they take the selfies. Look, the whole crew on your flight today is women. There's a woman pilot, a woman co-pilot. There's all women in the flight crew. Isn't this great? But if it was all men, they'd be like, look at this. Where's the diversity? This is a problem that needs to be solved. And you see it not just on TV. You see it at your workplace. If you work for a big corporation, you probably have to take these tests where everyone gets re-educated. They go through the re-education camp. I got it. Men suck. I don't even have to read the materials or watch the videos. I just know what to answer. Let me guess. I suck. That's the answer to all of these questions on all this re-education that your corporation's making. How about we back off of that? How about you get your boot off their throat if you want men to come back to supporting the Democrat Party? Because they've lost Hispanic men too. And black men were leaving in droves. They keep this up, they're not going to have one demographic of men left. So what advice would you give to the Democrats in regaining support of straight white men? My advice is, how about stop hating on us? But it can't be that simple, can it? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. It's News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 93.3 FM, WBAP. We're just getting a good giggle here about the Democrats' new initiative called SAM to reach out to male voters who they've just been pushing away as fast as they possibly can and then wondering why aren't you voting for me? By the way, SAM means Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, a strategic plan. All right. Well, they're trying to figure out what kind of language, what kind of content, what kind of syntax could we use to reach young male voters? Well, how about you stop hating on us for 5 seconds? How about say one nice thing about men? There's an idea. Mike in Plano, you're on WBAP. Your thoughts on Sam?
Good afternoon, James. I think they need to hold the course. They need to continue their messaging, putting out cringy videos of women, Democrat women, jumping up and down to music and singing at these rallies because they continue to bring in their pink-haired, facial pierced, radical liberal, cisgender people. Why would we want to tell them how to change? I love seeing them hemorrhage men and women, and like Democrat women who have sensible minds are leaving their party because they see nutcases are running amok in their all their crazy policies. So that's all I got to say. Keep the course.
Well,
Keep
Mike,
the course.
that's all good and sarcasm, but what good advice would you actually give them that could help?
Take all of their policies, throw them in the trash, and rethink about America and American people and what we want, not the crazy radical change they want to do to our country.
All right, I like your attitude. That's Mike in Plano. Got some hot opinions for you. My next guest here to clear up what's going on in the real estate market from DFW Real Estate Weekly, Todd Tremonti. You can hear him on the weekends here on WBAP, Saturdays from 3 to 4. Welcome to the James Show. Oh, I got to hit the button.
A rowdy one today.
Yeah, we do. All right. Now, Todd, I saw a headline that said the DFW housing market has cooled because we didn't sell as many houses as we did the previous month. But the previous month, we had the record across all major metropolitan areas for selling the most houses. So really falling off of that, it couldn't have been that bad. How bad is it, Todd?
No, I appreciate your mockery of a terrible headline. It feels like what we do most of the time on our show. But no, you're exactly right. March was basically a recent high. We were the most home sales in all of America in March. And then you follow that up with a dip from there, what's noticeable, by the way. It's not a worthless headline. It's just not very indicative of what's going on. All that said, home values are stable. They're not as exciting and running away like they were post-COVID. And transactions are what I would call decent. How about that for a label?
Well, I think these negative headlines and negative stories have a terrible effect because I talk with Bob Lavelle on this show on a regular basis about how many people, when they go to try and buy a home, are surprised that they actually qualify. Well, who put all this negative info in your head that it's so hard to get into a house these days?
Oh, my gosh. We spent a long time on the show a couple of weeks ago absolutely railing against major media outlets that they thrive on the negativity and the fear-mongering, but they really drive the market. And recently there's been a lot of attacks on real estate agents. And I kind of countered with, look, I think the media drives public perception of home pricing and affordability more than real estate agents do. So all that said, home ownership is approachable in DFW. It's more costly than it once was. There's no doubt about that. The entry level is more challenging, but we are having a very similar response from people that are saying, man, I've dreamed of living in that neighborhood. I've dreamed of having a small acreage property, and I'm surprised how approachable it is. I think what a lot of people are dealing with right now is not can they buy or sell, it's should they buy or sell. There's a lot of fear and anxiety that now wouldn't be the smartest time. And if you look at the history of DFW, there's almost nobody that ends up being really happy that they waited. So if people can, I think they should.
All right, we're going to take a break here. We'll continue with Todd Tremonti, hosts of Texas Real Estate. You can hear him on the weekends on WBAP. And I'm going to ask him coming up next for advice. People who are trying to get into their first house and they're worried about it. Well, What advice would you get from Todd Tremonti? Find out coming up next. I think my advice is call someone and at least look into it. Do you even know your credit score? But we'll hear from Todd Tremonti coming up next. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Well, hey there. Welcome back to the James Show. I'm your host, James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. The next James Show meet and greet is tonight in Keller at Manny G's. Your phone knows where it's at. I'm going to get done with the show, put up the podcast, and then head that way. So I'll be there around 7, depending on traffic, because I got to come from downtown Dallas. But I'd love to meet you. Come on out, say hi, and judge me based on my appearance. I know that's what you really want to do. We continue with my guest, Todd Tremonti, host of Texas Real Estate, here on the weekends at 3 p.m. on Saturdays on WBAP. And Todd, I saw an interesting real estate story here in Texas. Is there was one spot where housing prices were actually going down, and that was Galveston. So you read into it, and it turns out the theory is there was a whole bunch of people who got the Airbnb fever. Well, we'll just go buy a second property and a tourism hotspot, and we'll have a second stream of income here from Airbnb, and it'll be easy, and we'll make a ton of money. It turns out it's not that easy. You don't make that much money, and so now there's a whole lot of people who are trying to unload their Airbnb experiments, and that kind of makes me ask, how's that going around here? Have we reached our peak Airbnb saturation in DFW, Todd?
It's a great question. I would argue that Galveston's a very different market than Dallas. I happen to do a good bit of work down there, and the post-COVID run-up really gave people a false sense of the marketplace. You know, there was more comfort in that than there were in hotels there for a while. It was new. It was interesting, and a lot of people rationalized buying a second or third property for the sake of that revenue. And for a lot of people, that just was never going to be the case. For others, markets sort of oversaturated and will settle back in, and then it will be a good investment again, or continue to be. Dallas is different. And so one of the big factors to look at in Dallas is areas and cities and counties that are either outlawing short-term rentals or adding significant permitting and fees to it. So my answer to you is I would not say we've reached any sort of saturation. There's a lot of excitement up around Frisco and the Universal Studios and theme park type of deal where there is significant demand for short-term rentals and what the opportunities will be there, you know, near Victory, near major sports centers and things like that. So I don't think we're capped, but it's a tactical type market here where we need to be really careful where you want to do that, if that will continue to be legal, and if there's real significant demand for it outside of really occasional surges. So that's where people have gotten hurt pretty bad in Dallas.
Well, Todd, I personally despise all these restrictions on Airbnb rentals. Like, well, do I own this property or not? As a host
America
of
or not. Yeah.
Right. But you're the host of a real estate show. How do you feel about the restrictions?
Well, you know, my guess is we line up fairly well on our opinions about government intrusion and things like that. I will say, look, there's some protections that are wise for homeowners, and I understand where if somebody lives in a quiet neighborhood and their neighbors start renting their house out by the night and people do crazy stuff, that could be annoying. But I'm not for a lot of restrictions. I'm not for a lot of cost. I'm not for a lot of fees. I am for a free country. There's some gradient there to have some exceptions, but generally speaking, I think it's a free country. I'm proud to live in Texas and Dallas, and I want to be able to do with my property what I want to do with it, as long as it doesn't harm somebody else.
Well, and one thing I've tried to encourage younger people to do is get into home ownership the second you can afford it. And
yep,
I was really surprised the first time I bought a house because I wasn't making that much money and my credit wasn't that great, but I still got into a pretty good house with a pretty decent interest rate. And boy, what a difference that made, because whenever I left that house, I took a big pile of money with me. And all the times I've been renting, I never got to take any money with me.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with you, and who's surprised that the real estate broker thinks people ought to buy property, but I try not to be a homer and just say that all the time. I will say the generation that's entering homeownership for the first time right now doesn't have the same situation I did, or you probably did. I bought my first home for $141,000, but before that, my wife and I literally lived in a converted storage unit. So there were some sacrifices that had to be made. And I think that's what this generation of home buyers is kind of missing.
Well, Todd, my situation was a lot worse because I wasn't living in a converted storage unit before I bought my house. I was living with my mother-in-law. Oh, my God.
All right. Nobody wins in this game, okay, man?
Huge sacrifices all around.
You're a giver. You're a giver. The point I make, though, is I think this generation, this incoming crop of first-time home buyers, what we're seeing, and we talk to hundreds of home buyers every year, is they're really not interested in compromise. They want the forever home, or they want the dream. They want the impressive property first. And what is still feasible in Dallas is to get an affordable, compromised. I'm proud to live here in my first home. Maybe it's a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom. Maybe it's a little bit further out. Maybe that payment is a little bit higher percentage of your total income. I do not want people to poorly steward their resources and get themselves in trouble. But just like you said, homeownership is not only a financial stair-stepping opportunity, it's also a path to stability in the home and marriage, parenting, family, safety, rest, all those things. There's more than a financial ROI. I do want people to own homes, have roots, have security and longevity. But I do think most first-time home buyers ought to be willing to make some compromises to get into homeownership. I think a lot of people have been waiting, especially the last 2.5 years, and the cost of waiting has been really significant. And for some people, homeownership might outpace them. The rate of growth may be so quick in some areas that many people will never catch up. So I've told clients before, if you want your children to own real estate in DFW in another generation, you might want to find a way for you or them to start participating in real estate now.
All right, you can find Todd Tremonti on the weekends, 3 o'clock here on WBAP with Texas Real Estate. ToddTremonti.com, still your best website?
That's right, ToddTremontiTeam.com, or just Google me. You'll find me. We're pretty easy. You can call, text, send a message, fill out a form. We'll take good care of you.
All right, there he is. Thank you very much for your insight on real estate, Todd Tremonti.
Thanks, buddy. Take care. Talk to you soon.
All right, coming up in the next segment, yesterday we had talked about this new initiative. Looks like it's going to be law soon here, as long as the governor signs it, to put the 10 Commandments in Texas classrooms. Now, I love the idea. Not everyone likes the idea like me, but you'll hear a mix of some of the feedback in the emails I got after yesterday's show. Coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I'm your host, James Parker, and there's a law that's passed both chambers of the Texas legislature, may be signed into law any second now by the governor, and it would put the 10 Commandments in every classroom, in every public school in Texas. Now, if this was happening in a vacuum, normally I would be against that. It's like, look, we shouldn't be micromanaging the curriculum and whatever's going on in schools and trying to indoctrinate kids. But that horse has already left the barn years ago. We are now in an arena where public schools are definitely being used for indoctrination, some of it politically or culturally or socially. And if that's what we're going to do, if that's what we're going to have, and we're not going to have school choice, and we're going to have this socialized school system, then I think we got to start playing ball, and I support it. And if you're like, wait, you can't have indoctrination in classrooms. Oh, well, the other side gets to have indoctrinations in classrooms. Maybe this will change their mind about using the public school system as an indoctrination camp. Or maybe it'll kind of illustrate for the hard-headed people out there why, at the very minimum, we at least need school choice, if not outright the abolition of socialized schooling. And then the reviews on that were kind of mixed. I'll share some of it with you because I know you didn't hear yesterday's show, and I got a lot of emails afterwards. And like Linda has one example of, I got this probably 10 times. She says, if the left can have their religious icons in schools, Christians can too. Yes, that's the basics of it. Right. And if they want to make the argument that we shouldn't have, the ability for the government to indoctrinate their belief system into our kids, yes, keep going. Say that again slowly, and then let's revisit the curriculum. Let's revisit the flags and the posters and the pride parades and everything else that a lot of other people consider indoctrination. Let's talk about all the obscene books where you teach sexual subjects to minor children. Yeah, let's have this discussion, please. Steven says, also the First Amendment protects you from state-run religion. It doesn't mean banning the 10 Commandments while flying every flag but the one on Sinai. I thought that was a beautiful turn of a phrase. He said, separation of church and state was never meant to ban God from the classroom. It was meant to keep the government out of the pulpit, not to turn every school into a sanctuary for moral relativism and ideological experiments. If you can tolerate Satan clubs after school, you can handle a little thou shalt not kill in homeroom. There's a difference between freedom of religion and freedom from anything that offends an atheist blogger. Well, let me put a little nuance on Steven's email here, where the difference here between freedom of religion and state atheism is what they're trying to push in public schools. Not secularism. Not state secularism means they're indifferent on whether or not the book being studied has a religious intent. State atheism is what the Marxists believe, and that's not like an abstract theory. This is what Cuba did, This is what the Soviet Union did. This is what most of the people behind the Iron Curtain did. This is what China did and kind of still does. So yeah, state atheism is where you try and extinguish all mentions of religion from the public sphere. And that's not what we want here. That's not what the founding fathers intended here. It's great advice. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Yeah, this is good advice, whether or not you're a Christian, Muslim, Hindu, or some godless, soulless atheist. Yeah, it's seems like a pretty cut and dry situation for most of us, doesn't it? Melissa says, if you're going to shove queer theory down our throats, then we can have religion in schools. Melissa, word choice. Let's talk about word choice. We're not going to be shoving anything down kids' throats when we're talking about that. Deanna said, this is white Christian nationalism at its finest, and it's BS. Why does it have to be white? What is white about the 10 Commandments? What is it? The 10 Commandments seem to be pretty race neutral. It's not like they came from Sweden. They came from a part of the country where white people are not, or part of the planet where white people are not. White Christian nationalism. Really? What color are Christians? They're not a color. They're not specifically a color. And the 10 Commandments isn't just solely held up in the belief system of white Christians. It's all Christians. Brown Christians, black Christians, everything in between. We all believe in the 10 Commandments, regardless of race. And I don't understand how this is a nationalist move either. It is Christian. You got that part right, Deanna. But white Christian nationalism, there's nothing jingoistic about the 10 Commandments. Yeah, this is funny too. Yankee in Exile says, wait, this was a Twitter message. Wait until they find out the 10 Commandments are from the book of Exodus, which is from the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which is the Torah, which is Jewish law, not Christian law. Yeah, that's right. Christians don't believe in the Old Testament. Good point, Yankee in Exile. You really got us on that one. And I love it. If you have any comments, I don't get to read every email on the air. I don't get to respond to every email, but I do read every single email that you send to james@wbap.com. On a busy day, I still don't, I'm not so famous and popular that I don't have the ability to read all of them. Oh, I read them all. I just don't get a chance to respond to them all. But it's just rest assured, if you send it, I'll at least read it, even if you don't hear it on the air or get an email in return. All right, tonight, right as soon as I get out of here, I'm going to put up the podcast for the James Show, and then I'm going to head out to Keller for the next James Show listener meet and greet. If you want to come out, hang out with some like-minded folks who love really good radio shows, go to Manny G's in Keller. If it's on your way home, you have no excuse. Why? It's absolutely free. Come out there, meet me, judge me based on my appearance, maybe make some new friends. We'll have a couple of adult beverages, and we'll have as much fun with the Tuesday night as we possibly can, because I know we all got to work tomorrow. All right, so come on out. Meet me at Manny G's Keller tonight from around 7 p.m. to around 9 p.m. And then as soon as that's over, I'm going to be looking for the next location for the next James Show meet and greet next month. So if you know a person who either runs or owns a bar, restaurant, someplace, some venue that could house it, and they want to house the next James Show listener meetup, just let me know. Send me an email, Facebook message, however you want to get a hold of me, Twitter message, Instagram message. Just let me know. I want to restrict this to people who listen to the James Show or WBAP in general. And let's support the people who support us. So maybe I'll get to meet you tonight. If not, I'll be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Stick around. Mark Levin's coming up next. I'm James Parker. This has been The James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.